Welcome to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast where seeing things differently inspires limitless possibilities. The Limitless Podcast was created in order to inform, educate, entertain, and share stories from within the blind and partially sighted community that show that the opportunities for those who are blind or partially sighted are truly limitless. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to your host, the founder of Blind Beginnings, Shawn Marcellet.
Welcome back to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Marcellet. Thank you for joining us again this week. Today, we are going to get to know some of our co-hosts a little better. Kind of occurred to me that many of the co-hosts that join each week are pretty interesting folks themselves. And often they're the ones that are interviewing or helping to interview. And we wanted to kind of turn the tables and let you know a little bit of the interesting and awesome things that they are doing. So with me today is Clement and Jill. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shawn.
Yeah, really happy that you guys are here for this. So maybe I think our listeners have heard you. Hopefully they've been listening to all the episodes and they've heard you lots. But why don't you introduce yourselves and maybe include a little bit your level of vision, but also tell us some of the stuff that maybe they don't know about you. Jill, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I haven't really been a co-host for a while, so it's a good refresher. Yeah, so I'm Jill. I have the eye condition retinopathy of prematurity. So I was low vision and then lost the rest of my sight, so now I'm totally blind. I graduated with a bachelor's degree, started my master's this past September. I have a guide dog who I've had for about a year and a half now, and I'm a competitive swimmer.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to dig into some of that in a bit, but Clement, tell us about you.
All right, so my name is Clement, and I'm totally blind. I have been blind since birth with a very rare condition called Norrie disease. I think there's only 400 or some odd cases in the world, so I'm rocking that and I'm proud of it. And I am an ESL teacher. I was before the pandemic. I was working officially. Now I'm more freelance, and I am also a gamer and a martial artist and a musician, among other things. I love to read. I love food, especially the eating part. Yeah, pretty much enjoy trying, everything under the sun that I haven't tried before.
So let's start with your program, Jill. Tell us about what are you doing? What are you studying? What's your master's in?
Yeah. So I guess I can start with the BA since I mentioned it first. So I graduated in April, with a bachelor's of communication and print and digital publishing minor at Simon Fraser University. That took me about 5 years. And my goal with that from its onset was to get into this master's program that I just started this September, which is a master's of publishing, mostly directed towards Canadian book publishing. But this semester was my first semester and it's mostly book publishing. But next semester, we're going to kind of dive into a bit more of like magazine and web publishing, as well, just like kind of multimedia publishing. So it's been pretty intense, as most masters, seemingly are. I think like the biggest and most cool thing we've done so far is we had to do what we called like the book project. So we were split. There's 15 students in total, and we were broken up into groups of 5, and we had to create a sub company, or a imprint is what you call it in the publishing industry, where we were given like an existing company and we had to create kind of a sub company underneath of them, like kind of with their own mandate, mission statement, all that fun stuff. Like basically their same values, just a little bit different. And we had to create it's all a simulation, I'll pretend, but we had to come up with a fall 2023 like list of books that we were pretending to sell and create. So we literally did everything for these books except for actually having to write them. So we came up with like the ideas, the author's story, like background, their life, like the book covers, the marketing, like all the marketing and sales and budgets for each book.
Wow.
All of that. And then our final kind of thing that we just had this past Friday was we had to give a 45-minute presentation to real life Canadian publishing industry people and like basically tell them about our company and sell our books to them, which is like a simulation of what you would do in the real world. So pretty crazy, pretty intense. It was everything that I was hoping for. And it was a lot, but it was really, really cool. So
that's so cool. Huh. So I feel like there must be some aspects of that are challenging, not being able to see, especially I'm thinking like designing the book cover.
Yeah. Yes.
How do you navigate that?
So thanks to my undergrad, I had some experience in design courses, because I mainly wanted to understand as much of the industry and as much of the publishing process as I could. So that of course includes design. And because I'm like totally blind, I have what we at SFU or Simon Fraser, we call an access aid. In my case, it's she's hired through the school to assist me in any visual components of any of my courses. And it's pretty rare. Usually it's like a different person each semester kind of thing, but I've had her for the past, I think 5 years, maybe 4 years. So basically with the design, especially with the covers, because that was one of our like individual assignments, was we take one of the books that our group came up with, and we had to design, it was the same book with 3 different covers, kind of based around 3 different genres, whether it be like, nonfiction, memoir, or like a fantasy book, or like a mystery thriller. Like we had to come up with 3 different covers representing the 3 different genres. And the way that I kind of do it is that like the ideas are mine. Like I want this photo on the cover, and I want the text to be this big, and I want it to be here. And I want these colors and this kind of font, and this is how big the book is going to be. And so I came up with literally all the specs for it, all the ideas for it. Mm-hmm. And then she takes that, and we work together. Because of the pandemic, it's been kind of over the phone rather than in person. But then she'll take my ideas, and we'll work together, and with her computer, she'll go do literally go make it on the computer with the specific computer software we use in the industry. Mm-hmm. Okay. So she's basically the eyeballs of the operation, but all the ideas are mine. So she just is implementing my ideas basically. So it's kind of tedious, but it works.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, I'm thinking of, okay. So first of all, we did an episode, oh gosh, at least a year ago, probably. Is that the same person that you brought her on the podcast and we talked a bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Was her. Yes.
Yeah. So if people haven't heard that episode, it was about navigating university when you're blind. And it was a really interesting conversation with your access aid, talking a little bit more about that. So people can check that out for sure. Mm-hmm. But I'm also reminded of, we did an episode where we were talking with Colin Van Ushelen about the fireworks. So he developed this whole fireworks display that was tactile and kind of had to like describe his vision to somebody who helped make it happen. So it's like, there's this artistic process in this as well, right, Jill? Because you've got this image in your mind, and then the other person has to help you kind of put it to paper. So
exactly. And like the beauty of like the access aid that I work with, she's worked with me for years. So we work very well together. And like she understands my sometimes very chaotic descriptions of what I want it to look like, because it's me. And I can be very confusing at times. But she also has like her background. She's a very artsy person in very many ways. Like she's a musician, and she makes quilts, and she she does animation and like music for movies. Like she has so many kind of artsy components to her skill set. Mm-hmm. So that was a really big asset when she got hired on with me, because a lot of it is either she's describing something to me that's visual, or I'm taking this very visual assignment and like based off of like I understand all the theory and the concept behind, that visual element of the assignment. And she's taking all of my ideas and just throwing them into a computer program. And that's how it is. And we've done various like tactile kind of elements as well. So it's not just me, like, here's a description, go take it and go do it. Like, she will help me make things tactile, right. Especially when I was first learning like the different kinds of fonts, or how, like, the comparison of how big an image on a book cover would be compared to the text or something like that. Right. So we had a lot of tactile elements as well. But with this master's program, you're moving so quickly. Like, we did the whole, the book project I explained, we did that in like 8 weeks. And in the real world, you're working on one book for about a year to a year and a half. We were working on 4 books in 8 weeks. So it's like, they do their best to make it as, of course, as realistic as possible, but within the constraints of a semester, it's not always quite possible. So we didn't have a lot of time to make things tactile. So it was just a lot of, this is what and like, because I'm in the master's, I did the publishing minor with my bachelor's. So a lot of those skills that I needed, I learned then, and we're just expanding on them within the master's program. Right. And plus with my group, like, we were kind of assigned different roles, and I was definitely not the designer because we didn't really have enough time for me to be the designer. And that's not really my interest or my direction with my career either. But I think it's still really important that you understand to the best of your ability each component of for sure that process. So yeah.
So what is your goal? What's the end goal? What do you want to be when you grow up?
So far, it kind of has changed over the last few months. Now that I know kind of more about the different careers within the publishing industry, mainly because like the publishing industry in Canada is quite small compared to the rest of the world, to be honest. But the 2 main, I guess, fields within the industry I'm interested in right now are something in audiobook production. Oh, cool. I'm really, really fascinated by that. Or, but I think my kind of number one choice right now would be what we call a literary agent. So I would be an agent. Authors would come to me with their manuscripts, or like kind of the first draft of their novel or book or whatever. And I would, take a read, and I would help them to kind of rework it if needed into a book that kind of flows a bit better, that would work a bit more. And then I would help create like a pitch that we would give to like a publishing company that would best represent their genre of their book. So a lot of like different publishing companies, whether they're like the top 5 corporation ones, or like the independent small little guys in the industry in Canada, that you have to kind of focus on certain genres. Like, not every company does every single genre. It's quite specific. Right. So I would then like take that author's book. I would take the author's book after we kind of reworked it a bit and kind of pitch it to them. And I basically would be advocating for the author to make sure, they were getting what they wanted from this process. So like, the book didn't get changed too much to where it's not even theirs anymore, or the cover is what they wanted, or, they were getting the proper amount that they should be getting paid for, stuff like that. So that's my main interest, cool. is the literary agent, or that's kind of the main goal. And then like the third possible option, because there's so many, is being it's called a structural and stylistic editor. There's like 4 kind of main types of editing within the book process. And the 2 that I'm interested in are kind of the first 2 that would happen to a book. So like structural editing is you kind of rearrange like the chapters and the paragraphs and like kind of the bigger parts of the book to make it flow better overall. And then stylistic editing is where or it's also called line editing, where you literally go line by line and like, this word you've used it too many times, or you can take all these words out and your sentence will, be a lot tighter and a lot neater and get the same point across, like those things. I'm not a spelling and grammar person. That is my biggest weakness within the editing. And like, that's the one everyone thinks of when they think of editing, but that's only one portion of it. So yeah, basically something in audiobook production, literary agent, or a structural / stylistic editor, not specifically in that order, but
So
anywhere in there. Yeah.
I'm going to bring Clement back in, I promise. But I have this, like, I've always wanted to write a book. And so this is like really fascinating to me. And I'm so excited that I know someone who knows all these things. So like,
yeah, I get that a lot, actually.
Does the author pay you directly? So if say I write a book and I want to hire you as my agent to read it and tell me if it's good, to rearrange the chapters, like to help me promote it, to help me get a publisher, like what does someone pay for something like that? I don't mean what do you charge, because you're not done yet, but just in general, like what does that process cost?
That really depends on like the person you're hiring. So like an editor, because there's like in-house editing where you work under that company, or you can do freelance editing. So like if you're a freelance editor, you would charge by not only the hour, but you would also charge by how many words or how many pages you can edit in that hour. So let's say in an hour you can edit, let's say, rough example, like 10 pages. And that's like every like small detail edit that you could probably charge anywhere from like $30 to $50, give or take. Because it's such a tedious process, or it can be, and you're doing a lot depending on how big the book is. As where for like an agent or a designer or publisher or whoever to get paid, that is kind of contract based. So what ends up happening a lot in the publishing industry is like as a publishing company, you put a lot of money out there up front to get the book ready to sell into the market. But then so you put a lot of money in at the start, and then you kind of have to wait for the money to come back to you and get paid. So like when a book is sold, there's a certain percentage of that sale that would go, like a certain percentage will go to the author, certain percentage will go to the agent if there is one, because there doesn't always have to be an agent. Certain percentage goes to the publishing company. So it kind of we call those royalties, kind of thing. So it's kind of a salary based as well. It really depends on the position that you're in. But the editor example is kind of the most like direct one I could give you right now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very complicated, actually.
Yes. Sounds like it. Awesome. During your bachelor's, one of your projects was to record a podcast. And I think Clement was part of that podcast, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was our final project for, I think it was like a publishing, speaking of Kiki, it was a podcast, final project. We had to create a podcast, and it could be on any topic we wanted. It could be as long or as short as we wanted, and with whoever we wanted. And at the time, I was struggling with some issues at that previous swim club that I had mentioned. So the topic was all around ableism within sports, specifically as a disabled para swimmer. And I just wanted to get, other people's experiences to that topic, issues they've experienced, condescension, ableism. So Clement and Nika actually were my guests. And it just was a really big, really great conversation all about ableism in sports and, how we have dealt with those experiences and struggles. So yeah, it was a really fun experience. And I got to see kind of your guys' side of it for once. So that was really interesting as well.
Awesome. Is that podcast on your blog website, or
actually,
can people find it? Oh, you should put it on there. I didn't
actually post it anywhere, but that's a good idea. I should post it. It's like, it exists. It's just, it's a thing. I definitely should post it on my website. Actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can maybe share a link to it in our show notes for our listeners if you want to.
You should do that for the Hunters and Connections blog.
Yes, we'll do that for the blog as well. Awesome. Okay, let's hear a bit from Clement here. So Clement, the biggest thing I'm so excited about, probably maybe even more excited than you, is you have a new job as a narrator for Descriptive Video Works, and your first movie that you described is on Netflix this holiday season. Well, I guess it'll be there all the time, which I finally watched on the weekend, and it was so amazing to hear your voice through the whole movie. So tell us about this. Tell us about the movie. Tell us about how this came to be. I just want to know all the things.
All the things.
Yes.
Okay, well, so so yeah, I mean, that was cool thinking about that, because I've known you for so long, and this is something that I probably never would have ever imagined doing, or getting the chance to do. And you know, it's interesting because this is one of those examples of how you never know what can happen if you just step out and try and do something. So we a few months ago we recorded a podcast with Brandon Cole, who's a friend of mine, about gaming and, you know, accessible gaming, which is one of my hobbies, as I described earlier. And after this email, I got an email from Shawn, or after this podcast, sorry, I got an email from Shawn one day saying, "Hey, so somebody contacted me about you, about your voice, and they were wondering if they wanted to, you know, if you would mind doing some narration for them." And I said, "What company?" She said, "Descriptive Video Works." And I was like, "What? That's unexpected." As some people may know, I was also I hosted the Harry Potter Club, the book club during the first year of the pandemic. And we read through 3 of the books together. Now, I wish I had that as recorded material to show people. That would have been fun. But so, you know, I did that. I did it at that time, and I thought, this is fun. I love reading to kids, and I love reading out loud, and I love Harry Potter. So why not just do it? Little did I know that it was a warm-up act, because Melissa from Descriptive Video Works contacted me and said, "Hey, we have, you know, we're wondering if we would, you know, if you'd be willing to come on as a contract narrator, because that's what narrators all do. It's contract." And she said, "You know, it wouldn't be steady work, but, you know, every now and then we might ask you to come read some things for a movie or for a TV show or for an event or something." And I was like, "Okay, I mean, nothing to lose, right?" So I decided to try it, and I said yes. And she said, and the first thing she sent me was, "So I have a project for you, and it's a movie on Netflix." And I was like, pardon? That's not where I expected that to go. I thought it was going to be, you know, something local, or, you know, maybe a local event, or just something smaller.
Yeah.
But
ironically, it's you know, I've done 3 projects now.
Oh, really?
I've done 3, and it's really funny because they've gone from bigger to smaller to smaller.
Oh, really?
So, we'll talk about that in a second, but, you know, so she asked me to come in and do some work, and that day that happened to be I had come out of we just finished renovations at my house, and I was feeling pretty raspy because of all the dust, and I was sleeping in a bedroom that was still dusty, and we hadn't finished it yet, and so I had a bit of a cold for that whole month. It might have been laryngitis, I don't actually remember, but she said, "Can you come in and do it?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, because my voice is the way it is." And I said, "Okay, but, you know, let's try and make it work." So, you know, she called me, and we set up a time for me to go into the studio, and I sat down on the microphone, and they gave me the script, and I read this whole movie in about
that day,
4 hours.
That day?
Yeah. And of course I had to come back, and I had to do pickups and stuff. So
okay.
The process for this, how narration works when you're describing, is you don't actually get to watch the whole movie.
Right.
Which would be awesome, because I would totally do the job just to be able to get sneak previews of movies earlier than everyone else. But so they give you the lines, and the lines are very specifically coded to specific moments in the movie. And, you know, so they will cue you in, and they'll count you down. That's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 here, and then you have to read the line. And then depending on the line and depending on that particular moment in a movie, you might have to read it again faster. You might have to read it with more energy. You might have to read it with less energy. You know, kind of every way, forward, backwards, upside down. And it's interesting because you that's when you kind of learn that writing audio description, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot, you know, as someone who loves language and who loves languages, you have to choose your words very carefully to make it exciting, and to, you know, also make it fit the moment you're trying to describe, so that 6 different things don't happen when you're trying to describe one. You have to find a style of description. Do you want to be very bare bones and describe what is happening, or do you want to be a type of narrator that Shawn and I we've both talked about this before, that we personally aren't so much a fan of, where it's almost like color commentary, where everything is being described, and so you kind of had to go through that process of as a narrator, I don't get to go through that process. I just get to read what they give me. But of course, it's fun because, me and the mixing engineer, we get to kind of look at a line. We're like, I'm not sure if we like it that way. And so, we might record it, just for fun, just an alternate take, with an article or without an article, as in, or the, and, we'll send that in and we'll just kind of give them what they like. And because, this is all being digitally edited, every take we record is around, so they can splice them together. They can take them apart. They can, take half of one and half of another one and put them together, and they can take 1/3 of 3 different takes and mix them all together. So it was pretty fun. But definitely, it is exhausting for anybody who's never done narration work or been in the studio for a long time, when you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I know people say I talk a lot, but that it gets exhausting. Which is probably why the older I get, the less I try to talk, because you realize that sometimes talking too much is just more than what's necessary. But when you do a job like that, that is basically your job, is to talk a lot. So the movie is called Falling for Christmas. It is a rom-com.
That's why you kept telling me to watch it.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense now.
And it's a very typical kind of Hallmark, warm and fuzzy, heartfelt Christmas movie, which is great. And then this is another interesting thing. And I'll let you field more questions. But the other interesting thing about this whole process is, because you get to watch bits of the movie, it's kind of like being teased. And I'm kind of, part of me comes, no, I just want to watch the whole thing because I want to know what's happening. Because you get all these little moments out of context, and some of them are, really big moments, very spoilery moments.
Right.
And so once you've done all that, it's kind of like, well, I kind of have an idea of what's happening, but dang it, I just want to watch the whole thing.
So have you watched it?
I am still in the middle of it, because as many people who know me well know, I cannot stand to hear my own voice.
I was gonna ask, how weird is it to hear your own voice?
It's absolutely horrible.
Oh, you did really well though. I thought it's a good. I like the movie, but I just also super got a kick out of Clement being in my living room with me. Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like.
So back on record, it was kind of weird. Yeah, it was a little weird, hearing my own voice, and especially thinking about the fact that I still can't believe the fact that I did it when I was sick, and they thought it was good enough to put out. It floors me. And the whole process is it's actually pretty simple. You get the line. I had a Braille display, and then we just read the lines as many times as we needed to. Again, and of course they play the movie back when you're reading that line, so you kind of get to hear little bits of dialogue and little bits of things. So like I said, it's very informative, and it makes you want to watch the whole thing for sure. And it came out a few months ago, and not only is it on Netflix, it's also one of the few Netflix movies that gets also a theatrical run. So I don't know how many people have heard my voice now, but I do know that a while after it came out, Melissa forwarded me an email from a consumer. I don't know who this consumer is, but someone sent in a positive comment on the audio description, which apparently doesn't happen a lot. So that was super humbling, and I never thought this was something that would ever go the way it did. But that was very, very humbling.
So what are the other things that you've narrated now?
So 2 things. One, I've done a game show for one of the gaming companies in in Canada, Ubisoft. Well, they're not Canadian, but they're pretty well established here in Canada, in Montreal.
Okay.
And I did it was a show that was showcasing some of their upcoming games, some of the developer interviews, some of the staff interviews, that kind of thing. So they streamed that, and I did the narration for that. People can find that on YouTube as well. That's for free, so you don't have to pay to go watch it. And I also just did a couple of segments last week for a CBC original called The New Wave of Stand-Up, and that'll be coming out. I don't know when that's coming out, because that's something else that I don't really get told as to when to expect these things. But when they do come out, people can go check that out as well. And that's featuring some really great Canadian comedians. And I'm definitely going to watch it, because the bits of comedy I heard while I was recording the lines were definitely very captivating. So
I find that there's not usually a ton of description required in stand-up, right? Well, it depends on the comedian, I guess.
Yeah, so it's interesting, because this is kind of a lot of it is much more locational and kind of minor details about what they're wearing, where they're sitting, the location of the stage, and kind of little things that they do. And it wasn't a lot of lines. It was maybe 3 or 4 for each particular segment, and I'm guessing each segment is probably about 10 minutes. Right. So it's not going to be a whole lot. It's mostly opening credits, closing credits, and every kind of wherever I guess the writers felt it was pertinent to have a key moment described. Okay.
Let's talk about sports, since both of you are athletic types. So Jill, you mentioned swimming. Tell us about that. What do you do? Where do you swim? Who do you swim with? What are your goals? What are your strokes? Tell us.
Yeah. So I started, I grew up knowing how to swim, but not the proper 4 strokes, flip turns, none of that. And it's kind of something I always wanted to learn how to do. And when I moved down to the Lower Mainland, tried to get into it, and then school just got so crazy, didn't happen then. And then about 3 years ago, I think, actually right before the pandemic, I was with a local club here in Burnaby. And then because I was older than most of the swimmers, I was I think 24. And the COVID rules, I was asked to leave. So I went to a club in North Vancouver. So I had to commute quite a ways for practice each week. And I was swimming about 3 to 4 times a week in North Vancouver. And just didn't have a very good experience with the swim club there. There's just a lot of disagreements and with the coach and the way that we were being coached. And I say we because another co-host of the podcast, Nika, she also swims. We swim together, the same clubs. So when I say we, I do mean her, because I say we all the time. So her and I, basically, we had talked about switching clubs again. But right before we had switched to the club we're currently with, we actually had the opportunity in July to go to the BC Summer Games to swim in the para events there, which was super cool. That was my first provincial swim meet ever. So pretty intense, a little terrifying. And it was my biggest competition. I'd only ever done kind of smaller local ones then. And kind of the nice thing, it was in Prince George, BC, which is only 5 hours from my hometown. So my family could actually come and watch for once.
Oh, cool.
Which was super exciting. And so I competed in 4 or 5 events there. And so my swim strokes are, there's 2 different ones. The ones I'm good at are freestyle and backstroke. And the ones that I love are backstroke and butterfly. I hate breaststroke with a burning passion. It is not my stroke. I struggle desperately with it.
Really?
I can't get the kick right, and it drives me crazy. I was doing the whole thing wrong for so long. And part of the reason we were wanting to leave clubs is the one club we previously was with was because they weren't teaching us properly. That was fun. But aside from, not knowing everything about a competition at that point. Like I didn't know diving or flip turns at that time. Still won medals, so that was pretty exciting. I won a silver in 50-meter freestyle, bronze in 100-meter backstroke, and then bronze in 100-meter butterfly. So that was really cool. I was really pumped about that. And then we had made the decision together and individually to move to the current club, like the club we're with currently, which is the Pacific Sea Wolves in South Surrey, White Rock area.
Oh, wow.
So again, quite a bit of a commute. But we were really trying to find a club that had para coaching experience, because the clubs that I had been at previously didn't have a lot of experience with para swimmers. A little bit of like awkward, kind of condescending angles that I don't do well with. I don't learn well if you're condescending. So it wasn't previously the right fit. So this current club, the Pacific Sea Wolves, they have a couple para swimmers in different class levels than I'm in. So I'm an S11 swimmer, which is like the totally blind level. So they've had experience with other para swimmers, not specifically visually impaired blind swimmers, but they were willing to take us on. So we've been swimming with them since September. So 4 months now? Roughly, almost 3 months. And we've done about 2 swim meets with them. And in the 3 months or so that I've been with them, in the first swim meet, I got to the exact time. So swimming is very time oriented. You're always trying to beat your previous and best times. So the first swim meet with this new club, I was very 1 second off of my best time from the BC Games, super close. And then the second swim meet we just had 2 weeks ago, I believe, I actually surpassed my best time for 50 freestyle, which was super exciting. So the goal kind of now is to see if we can make it to the provincial qualification times. And then just try to keep going further, go to provincials, go to nationals, international. And my goal is honestly, I just wanted to learn the proper swim strokes, the dives, the flip turns, all the techniques. And the more that I learned those, the more that I fell in love with it. And kind of the goal now is just to see how far I can go with actually competing. Like the ultimate dream is to go to the Paralympics for swimming. Not sure if that'll ever happen, but because I'm really short and swimmers are tall. So there's a little bit of a struggle there already. And because I got into swimming competitively later on in my life, as well as kind of jumping from a couple clubs just due to coaching issues, and not being taught properly, which was unfortunate, not our fault. But so we're kind of a bit behind in a few of those aspects, which is unfortunate. But the goal is not the upcoming, is it 2024? Definitely not those Olympics. Maybe not even the 28 Olympics. Maybe the 2032 Olympics. That's kind of where I'm aiming for. But we'll see what happens in the meantime. But I'm loving it, and this club is the perfect fit. The commute is farther even than the North Vancouver one, which is unfortunate. But I'm willing to do whatever I can to do the sport that I love. So,
good luck. That's cool. Yeah. I think you must really love it to be willing to do that kind of commute multiple times a week on top of everything else you're doing. That's amazing.
I love it though. And I love the water. And plus being in class all week and just sitting on a desk, I need something physical, something active to do.
Yes.
So swimming is a really nice reprieve from sitting in class all day. So
totally. Oh yeah. I love swimming too. I miss it. I don't know how you do backstroke though and love it.
I love backstroke.
Backstroke for me is breaststroke for you. So I don't know. I just zigzagged all over the lane and
I still do that for sure. But definitely from the time when I first started to now, I definitely do not veer and zigzag near as much as I used to. So that's been fun to learn to not do.
Yeah, because you lose a lot of time with the zigging and the zagging. Yeah, definitely.
Big process.
Yes. Okay, Clement, tell us about your martial arts.
So I've been into martial arts since I was a kid. I've never done them, but I grew up on all the classic, martial arts films with Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li. and some, other more kind of local, kind of homegrown stuff. But, I've always loved them, mostly because, they've always kind of struck me as really interesting in the sense that, as someone who was born totally blind, I feel like a lot of us don't have a concept or a reference to what a punch looks like, what a kick looks like, or even, the fact that there are different kinds of punches.
There are.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. In the sense that, some punches will use, your knuckles, right? That's what we think about. But then there's also punches that will use the side of your hand, in a similar way you would swing a knife. There are punches that would use, the palm or the heel of your palm. And so, it's all really interesting to me because it felt different. And of course, as a blind person, feelings and touch and different tactile sensations, are kind of the point of fascination for us, right? Or one of them anyway. And so I always wanted to do martial arts, and I always wanted to do weapons because weapons are cool, and because audibly it's very loud and it's very satisfying to hear weapons clang or clash together and stuff. And so I always wanted to do that. But I never got the chance to because, like Jill said earlier, I don't learn very well when I get condescended to, and the only teachers who were willing to take me were ones who took me in a very condescending way. And my family also never really pushed me to do it, although my dad would, verbally encourage me that you should do this, you should do that. But they, there wasn't ever a concerted kind of effort to help me find a dojo or a club. And so around 2011, I met a guy named Johnny Tai, who we've talked to, I think, before on the show. And he, he's also a martial artist who, his life basically revolves around it. And so, we got to talking, and I started kind of reinvigorating this dream of, maybe I could go somewhere with this. So I looked for a lot of different places, and, kept running into a lot of the same problems. The fact that teachers just weren't willing to take the risk, because some martial arts are dangerous, especially once you get into ones where there are, you're throwing people around and there's flips and there's different ways to fall and stuff. It's pretty daunting thinking about it, how to teach a blind person. And even now, as someone who does it, I always have to think about, if I was to teach a blind person, how would I explain this? And some of it is hard because, again, we don't have concepts for some of these movements because we've never experienced them. So I found an Aikido group, and Aikido is a Japanese martial art that's similar in some ways to Judo. They have similar roots, but Aikido is more self-defense oriented and more practical, whereas Judo nowadays, of course, is a Paralympic sport and Olympic sport. So that's how it's mostly practiced now. Whereas Aikido sticks to more traditional martial arts roots of being practical in terms of self-defense, but also having a very philosophical side to it that teaches, how to live life in a certain way while learning, kind of really interesting, at least to me, is transferring the body movements, learning lessons from the body movements that'll help you live life a certain way or help you learn how to treat other people. So I found a group, that was willing to take me. They said, well, we have no idea what we're doing, but if you're willing to come, we're willing to try. So I started joining back in 2016, and it's been 6 years now. And I just recently finished a test on the 24th of November, and I passed, and it was freaking me out because it was a test where I had to memorize a total of 50 possible techniques that I could get tested on. And out of those 50, I didn't know what my teacher was going to call. So that was stressful. And that kind of put me into the mindset of, what it must be like for a fight. You never know what's going to come up, and you kind of have to just be ready to do anything. Right. And so memorizing 50 techniques was crazy. I never had to do that before. And not only memorize them, but also, dig into the finer details of each one, where to put my hand, where to move my foot, how far to move my foot, how far I have to be from my opponent, or how close I have to be from my opponent, that kind of thing. So that was cool. I passed, which means the next exam I take will be a big one. It'll be a milestone for me. It'll be the black belt exam.
Wow.
So that's a huge step. And Aikido is not competitive, unlike most other martial arts, like judo or MMA or karate. So there's no, the only way of, the purpose of Aikido is more for growth and for learning discipline and kind of cultivating mental character. So, our measuring stones are, they show up in testing, of course, but also, when we do demonstrations, and just in everyday practice. And that's what I love about it. It's something that I get to do that doesn't quite have the competitive politics and competition stresses that a lot of other sports do. But it is something that doesn't cut me any slack, and I still get to push myself to be better and in a way compete, but not in a kind of officialized, formalized competitive setting.
So is there do you do sparring or anything like that?
Yeah, so
sparring, I don't know.
Yeah, so when the upper levels, once you get to kind of about where I am, after class, some of us will stay around and we'll horse around a little bit. I always say, it's like how everybody used to play fight in the schoolyard, except now they teach you how to do it properly.
Right.
And now when you fall, there's a soft mat to fall on instead of concrete or wood chips. So, and now when someone throws you around or pushes you, you can do cool flips and you can push them back and you can throw each other around and, understand that, everybody is doing it for fun and keeping each other safe. So yeah, we do. There is some sparring, and the higher level up you go, the more advanced you get. So my goal is to eventually get to a level where my instructor will let me spar against multiple people at once, because that looks cool as a heck in the movies, and I would love to be able to do that.
That sounds scary. Awesome. Okay. Jill, you mentioned you got a guide dog about 1.5 years ago, and I know that you have started a blog. I think it's all about your dog. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I got Kiki. Her name is Kiki. She's a female purebred black Labrador from the Seeing Eye. I feel like the Seeing Eye has been mentioned, or guide dogs have been mentioned multiple times on this podcast. So I don't want to get into that too much, but yeah, I've had her for about about 1.5 years, and it's been really great for me. I've always been a huge dog person. A guide dog was something that I always wanted to, try out and see how it went. And I fell in love and probably won't go back. I probably would continue to get dogs. But when I did a lot of research into kind of what guide dog, like training center, whatever I wanted to go into, I found that a lot of people had made blogs or video vlogs or whatever they're actually called, online, and just all this research. And I really loved the idea of people kind of, recounting their experience. But I knew that like during training, it was just going to be too intense, too busy, that I wouldn't have time or the dedication or motivation to do it at that time. But it was something that I always kind of really liked the idea of, and I figured that's something I'd want to do eventually. And I just, after Kiki and I got home and settled in and kind of fell into a really good routine, I started playing on the idea more and just developed it. And finally actually created the website and actually made blogs. And so it's called harnessingconnections.wordpress.com. So it's all, every post that I do is all about experiences with Kiki, and just like from it's like meet the team. So meet me, get to know Kiki and her personality and what she likes and doesn't like, and how crazy and goofy she is, but how good of a worker she is. And from and then other ones are like kind of her grooming routine and some like unfortunate, not serious, but still frustrating, some medical issues that she was experiencing, and, you know, like, just like cute and funny things that she does. Like there's just, you know, whatever kind of topic, whether it's a specific experience or just kind of overarching, you know, past few months of stuff we've been up to or whatever, just everything about her that I think people might find interesting. But it's also like kind of the two main reasons I wanted to post and create a blog about the experience of having a guide dog is just to keep track of all the, you know, silly and cute and just really random. My dog's really weird at times. So like, I wanted to keep track of all the, you know, the cute and funny memories and all the stories and everything to do with her. But also like for me, when I was doing my research into, you know, getting a guide dog and everything that goes along with that, I really found those other people's blogs really, really helpful and informative. So I kind of wanted to, I guess, maybe give back a little bit that way, to try and help, you know, other people find information and, you know, kind of a day-to-day or, you know, experience of what it's like having a guide dog every day and everything, because there's a lot that goes into it. And just, you know, trying to help people understand what it's like to give them a better idea if that's something that they want for themselves or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really good.
I totally relate with I post things on Facebook that are cute that my son does, and I always have. And it's really for me to capture, you know, in my memories. And it's so cool to look back and be like, oh yeah, that was so cute that he did that or whatever. So you're like creating this, like the equivalent of a photo album, right? Yeah,
exactly. And like, I mean, Clement's met Kiki like in Not a Harness, and like she's just such, like, I call her sweet, sassy, and silly is like her three S's that would describe her perfectly, because she's so goofy and there's just so many like really random, weird little goofy things she does. That's like, how do you not want to like capture that moment? But, like photos, you know, can't see them. They don't really care as much. If I post a photo, it's more for my sighted family members and friends. But a blog is just my own words, my stories about my dog that's such a huge part of my life now that I just want to, and I also have a really bad memory. I think my master's program is like burning my brain. My memory is like going so bad. So I wanted to like write down all these really cute little funny stories for my own self. Yeah. So that was just kind of, and it's like, you know, I don't expect them to be like this crazy viral blog kind of thing. That's not the goal of it. It's just to share with people. People can read it if they're interested, and just, you know, it's a fun little hobby for me. I enjoy writing. I enjoy editing, giving, you know, my degrees. So, and I'm a way better experiential or opinion writer than I am a creative writing. I'm not my thing. And the idea kind of came from like the Limitless blog and helping with that on and off. And like, I kind of like this, but like, let's do one all about Kiki because she's great and she's my dog and I can do it. So yeah, it was
cool. That's awesome.
Kind of developed, and it's been really good so far.
Good for you for actually like figuring out how to create a website and a blog also.
A lot of that is credit to my bachelor's degree. That was something part of my publishing minor. We had to learn that. So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Clement, you mentioned video gaming. It's not even called video gaming, is it? It's just gaming. I'm such a geek, or not a geek, I guess, because I don't know these things. But lately I've had conversations with a few kids who are partially sighted, who are curious about games or have mentioned games not being accessible, or have said things like, well, the games that are accessible are kind of lame. We want the popular games to be accessible. I just like, what's your opinion of gaming, and how do you, we don't have that much time.
I was going to say, how much time do we have?
Not a lot of time, but just sort of sum up, like, how do you find an accessible game? What do you like about it? Like tell us a little bit about your gaming passion.
But before we talk about gaming, I'm going to go on record and say Jill has confirmed with me that I'm one of Kiki's favorite people.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
That's true. She gets very excited when she sees Clement, and he gets her worked up like no one else.
And I'm a bad influence because she gets excited when she sees me when she's supposed to get excited.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm just that appealing. Okay, what can I say? So
Kiki really likes guys. What can I say?
there you go. So one of the things about, I mean, how do I find an accessible game? I mean, that's a loaded question in and of itself, because the question of accessible, I think, when it comes to gaming is a little different. Because accessible doesn't necessarily mean that there are features to, help blind people out. People will sometimes use the words accessible and playable interchangeably. So that's something you have to be careful of as well, but I think one thing that, happens sometimes when I look for a game is, first of all, now that accessibility is becoming more of a discussion among developers in the gaming industry, there have been games that are more accessible deliberately with features like, narration for the menus, tracking objectives that'll help you navigate a bigger world, things like that. And so, but there's also games that don't have these features that are just accessible by nature, like games where, the main point of a game is to fight in 2D. So you only move left to right. You might have to jump or crouch, but it's a very limited area to move. And, the fighting is done in an enclosed space, and there's only two directions you can move. Mm-hmm. Those games are, at a very basic level, playable. If you learn to recognize the sounds for different things. And what I find really interesting is for these games, especially fighting games, they also, as a blind person, will help you develop spatial skills in terms of how to figure out how close you are to an opponent, or what your action will do, how an action will change your orientation in the game space, stuff like that. And that actually transfers very well to O&M, which was something that I wish I had talked about when I was talking about martial arts. That's something else I could talk for. Maybe we should have another episode about that. How to learn O&M in unexpected ways. But so that all goes into the process of trying to find a game and say, as a totally blind person, especially, how much of this can I play? Can I play only the segments where there's combat, or can I finish the entire game without having to ask for sighted help? And sometimes there will be games that have audible cues and audible sounds that are there for immersion, not for accessibility, but they will be things that help with accessibility. Like, for example, there's a game that I really like called 13 Sentinels, and it's a sci-fi kind of time travel based game, but part of it involves characters kind of not meditating or contemplating certain words, that they hear from the conversations around them. And because it's meant to simulate their thoughts, when you move between the keywords, those keywords are read out loud, kind of like a screen reader. And that's not accessibility. That is just purely there for immersion. But, little things like that can help with accessibility. And then, of course, when you actually choose to contemplate that keyword, that's all fully narrated as well. So, and it's even cooler because it's not just a TTS, it's the actual voice actor or voice actress for the character,
right,
who is reading out those choices. And that same game has, sounds for when you can interact with something. When you're walking around in the game world, it'll beep. And again, that's not for specifically accessibility. It just happens to be one of those features that was dropped in there for design and for atmosphere or whatever, but that tends to work. So what I would say, to sum that all up is, if a blind person with low vision or who is totally blind wants to find games that they can play that are popular, it's very possible. you just can't expect every game to be accessible by design. A lot of them will be accessible accidentally. And there'll be little features in there that'll help with accessibility, but it won't be specifically labeled, as being accessible to blind people.
Okay.
And the more you play them, and the more you look around, and the more you kind of know what to look for, the easier it'll get. And part of that kind of translates into me. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been sitting on this. I have been wanting to get into game streaming and going on YouTube and Twitch and talking about games that I find accessible. There just still needs to be some finer details worked out, and I still need to get some help figuring out whether I have what I need to be able to do it. But that is something that I definitely want to do for sure.
Well, I was just going to ask, is there a website somewhere that lists games that are accessible, or is there a platform where people can find out whether so the kid I was talking to today was an iPad game, but it's called Roadblocks, and there's little prompts that are printed that are too small for him to read.
Yep.
And he's frustrated, right? Because his brother can just skim through and is way better than he is. And there's certain things he can't do because he can't read the prompts.
Yep. And unfortunately, Roblox is one of those games that if you're completely blind is not going to be playable. And that's also something, that you're going to have to accept, is that some games just aren't. It kind of reflects, for me, how we live life as blind people. Sometimes is, there's, many times out of 10, 7 or 8 times, there'll be an alternate way of doing things, or there'll be, something that we can do to either partially or fully enjoy something or be part of something. But there's also just going to be those, that handful of times when it just doesn't work,
right.
And we have to move on and pick our battles. Right. So there's definitely got to be games. There's definitely going to be games like that. And as for a platform, I mentioned Brandon Cole earlier. His website's a great place to start. His website is brandoncole.net, BRANDONCOLE.net. And he focuses mainly on popular console games, so games on the PS5, PC, Xbox 360, not 360, that's going back a long time, Xbox Series X, things like that. But if you want if people are wanting to find out a place for, games specifically made by blind people and popular console games, the place is audiogames.net, AUDIOGAMES.net. And of course, the hard thing is, the reason there isn't one centralized resource for these things is because, again, what everybody's definition of accessible is going to be different. Everybody is going to be willing to jump through different hoops to play certain games. There will be games where I'll go, no way, that is impossible. Whereas another blind person might say, oh yeah, I just wandered around for half an hour until I figured out where to go next. Mm-hmm. And, I just don't have the patience for that kind of thing. So,
right.
Everybody's threshold is going to be different. But even having said that, if a blind person says that they can do it, I will still give it a try, even if I don't think it's possible, because it may be more possible than I think.
Right. Awesome. Well, you got to get that YouTube channel up and running. I think that would be awesome to explain. You've done a great job here. And we also do have an episode back in the vault, in the archives about video games with Brandon Cole. So if you want more details, if you're a gamer, not a video gamer, just a gamer, check that out. We have to wrap up because this is getting long and you guys just have too many talents and interesting things. But I did want to mention a few other things. So Jill is also a great baker and cook and has been leading our Baking with Blind Beginnings program. And also this year we're calling it Limitless Lunch. So just thank you so much, Jill. I have learned a lot of kitchen stuff from this program. Wasn't designed to teach me, but I get to learn just because I'm there. So I really appreciate that.
It's been really great. I actually really enjoyed doing it. So
yeah. So that's something else that you're good at and you enjoy, right?
I love it. Yeah. It's funny. You said it's my talent. I'm like, I never thought of that before, but like, I definitely had a lot of my parents and just vision teachers who were really great at cooking. So a lot of my skills are from them. So just kind of took that and went with it. So yeah.
Yeah. And another talent that I have to mention about Clement, and anyone who's had the privilege to hear him, he's a very talented musician, and we have the best campfire sing-alongs ever at Blind Beginnings.
We do.
Yes. So Clement,
I love him.
Yeah, you are an amazing guitar player and play by ear and can sing so many songs and know so many lyrics and are just a great leader as well. So I'm so I feel privileged to be able to attend those sing-alongs with you.
Oh, thanks, Shawn. I'm glad you keep inviting me year after year, and I'm hoping that continues.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here, and hopefully our listeners have a bigger glimpse into your lives and, what you're also doing beyond co-hosting the podcast. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Shawn, for giving us the chance.
Mm-hmm.
You've been listening to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. If you have a question, a comment, a future topic request, please send us an email to limitless@blindbeginnings.ca. Please share our podcast, like, subscribe, leave us a rating, and join us next time.
This podcast has been brought to you by Blind Beginnings, an organization based in Vancouver, Canada, that supports children and youth who are blind or partially sighted, along with their families. Music for this podcast is composed by Shawn Bishop and Clement Chow. Production and audio editing by Rob Minot. For more information about Blind Beginnings and the work it does to support children and youth who are blind and partially sighted, along with their families, visit us on the web at www.blindbeginnings.ca, and also remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.